players will leave your game during the intro, and that's a big problem of indie devs. So let me hand you a piece of the fix before I explain anything. If you open your build later and count the seconds until the player can decide anything, maybe it's a class pick, a card pick, a fork they can pick up, a story fork, whichever it is, that count you just made is an unpaid stretch of your game. And I want you to remember those seconds, that number, because we will come back to it. Those players will look at your thumbnail, click on the store page, look at the trailer, look at the screenshots, click the download button and have downloaded and started it. They've done their part, but now you're asking them, hey, please wait a second longer. But there is a mental clock running on that, which is the part I never used to think about when making games. Whatever attention you got barely anything of that, a small piece. And I only personally started counting that window after I noticed a player quitting my game way before the actual game started, which tells you on how quick I was with fixing it, because I saw it when someone replayed it. And yes, some of those things you cannot delete. If your engine license puts a splash screen in front of your game, it goes there. There is no decision you can make to influence that, and I'm not going to pretend like you can fix it. But almost everyone gets to pick how long you put your own splash screen and intro and menu there. So instead of putting your logo as the splash screen, you could put it as the loading screen, or let the players end it with a button press. And if you really cannot move it, the important thing is that the logo has already used up part of your attention window. So everything after that needs to be shorter than you initially planned. If I see people playing my game, I feel like they look done with the game. The problem was that the first stretch was mood and branding, a lot of me, and almost nothing of that the players can push back or skip it. Last video I squeezed that into about 10 seconds or cut it as a rule, and some of you heard it like, oh yeah, you need to open your game like a roguelike. But the bar here is really small in reality. You need to think, could the player have done anything in that time, any other thing? And did players even notice? Walking through a corridor with a cutscene doesn't clear the bar. And neither does having a huge amount of lore in a text box. But games can still keep the same bar with tiny changes. Looking at a target, picking an object up, a line they don't want to say, or a line they can switch. It can be really small. What matters is that something else was possible and the player feels in control. And that stretch before you give the players an answered decision is the time you're asking them to give you even more of their attention. There's a second part of that stretch. Say you open on a text, a war happening between kingdoms or castles, a narrator with a voice you paid for or even voiced yourself. So the obvious cost is that the players can skip it, and everybody knows that one. The real cost is what skipping teaches them. The first seconds a player can run an experiment. They skip something and then they wait to see whether anything bad happens, and if the game carries on perfectly without them having to read a word, they have learned a rule about your game. That text doesn't matter. And the problem is that that rule sticks through the whole game, and you don't get to unteach the player that. So when you later on teach a new thing, they skip that, they get stuck, and they blame your game. And they're sort of right. If you look at the larger version of this, it's the same mistake with other games. Brutal Legend, for example. They sold an action game with Jack Black in it, which is cool, but partway through the game it becomes a real-time strategy game. There are a lot of games which throw you into the action right away, like Balatro or Vampire Survivors I mentioned in the last video, or Doom that hands you a gun right away. And those games tell you much later who you are and what your story is, because players in those genres don't want to see anything of the story before they care. But I also read the comments. There are games who do it differently, like Half-Life with the tram or Skyrim with the cart. The Skyrim cart is a long section. You're held there, you need to watch, and the game is doing that on purpose. But that still counts. The other thing I read is the Half-Life tram. It's really slow, but the place keeps performing in that time. So you're building the picture of the world while you sit. But that's a different thing from the branding loop and the games we just mentioned, where waiting is the only option you have. But long opening games still want a fair choice that belongs to the player. That thing can be so mindless, so incredibly small. It could be where the player looks, what you pick up, which line you refuse to take. That first choice is really small, but it should match the thing that the player was sold. If your game is slow and the store page sold that, that is fine. But if you sold something fast and the opening beginning is slow, that's where you lose the players. Everything before that number, after the first time, you can make it skippable, or the best thing you could do is turn it into a choice. You can even let the player just choose a loadout before you put them into the game. You can keep the story. What should go is anything that asks the player to wait before they do something, or at least move it a bit further back and give the player a choice. With my game, that count was about a minute before anything happened as a decision. And I could be wrong where exactly that number is good or bad, but the actual counting is the part that's important. How long are those first seconds of your game, and what was the first real decision? And even with slow games, write them in the comments down below, subscribe, and with that I hope I'll see you in the next one.